Today, almost all of our tasks are carried out with the help of applications. Organizations are always looking out for innovative ways to develop new apps to improve their reach to a bigger and a more diverse client base. Apps can be built in many different ways and can perform different functions. For example, we have mobile app, and a web app, desktop app. And it totally depends on the needs of the business when it comes to deciding which type of app to develop. Whether it could be a mobile, web, or desktop, it completely depends on what's the need of the business. Therefore, software developers are also different based on what type of development they do. If a software developer develops a mobile app, then the developer would be called a mobile app developer. And if the software developer works on a web application, or if the software developer develops a web application, then he or she will be called a web app developer or web developer. And if it's a desktop app, then you might be called a system application developer. Well, all in all, anybody who writes a piece of code in order to develop a software, does not matter mobile, web, or desktop. As long as you write a piece of code to develop a piece of software, then you would be called a software developer. By category, we call mobile app developer or web app developer or system app developer. In other words, the desktop app developer. All right, let's start with mobile apps. And I believe it doesn't require much explanation because it's pretty straightforward and we use it in our daily life. A mobile app is any app that we download to our mobile devices. It could be our phone or it could be our tablets like iPad or some other Android tablets. And it could be an iOS app or it could be an Android app. If you're an iPhone user, you would need to go to an app store to download apps. Or if you are an Android user, then you would need to go to the Google Store, I guess, because I'm not an Android user, so I don't really know how that works. But there is an Android user's app store where you could go and download Android-specific apps. And developers, when they develop mobile apps, they develop the same app for two different platforms. Basically, they write the same logic in two different languages. Because for iOS, it is a different world. And it has its own programming language. And basically everything is different. So for Android, it's also different. Well, if we want to develop an app, or any other big organizations, if they want to develop an app, they would need to develop the same app for two different platforms, meaning they would need to write the same logic in two different languages. Of course, it's extra work. Well, it is what it is. Some of the examples that we have for mobile apps are Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and Telegram, and Facebook. All these social and also other productivity and lifestyle and entertainment apps that we use on our phone, these are under the mobile apps category. Well, another thing I would like to also mention is that sometimes you might hear native app or native app development. That means the same. Native apps, mobile apps, these are sort of interchangeable terms. And when people say native apps, it essentially refers to the nativeness of the apps. For example, if you think about the example that I gave you earlier about the Android app development and iOS app development, we have to create apps that are native to the iOS environment, and we need to create apps that are native to the Android environment. So these apps are native to a particular environment or a particular platform, and that's why we call them native apps too. All right, next up is web apps. And I believe this is also another easy term for you to understand. If you ever visited youtube.com or amazon.com or ebay.com, quora.com, well, these are all web applications. So essentially, any apps that you use on the browser is called web app. any application that you go to using www. For example, amazon.com is called a web application. It's becoming a huge trend right now that all those software companies are moving their system or desktop apps to the web. Meaning, back in the days, we used to download Adobe Photoshop or systems like that from the web in order to use it. But right now, all these software companies are creating the web version of their softwares and making it subscription based. So you would no longer download it and pay only one-time fee, but instead you pay every month. So it's subscription based. That's why web is the way to go in the future, and it is the future of technology. Everything will be on the web. So learning web application development and mobile development is literally the top of the tech stacks right now and in the future. And the last is desktop apps. Have you ever downloaded any games to your computer, or have you ever downloaded any softwares and installed to your computer? Well, there we go. That is a desktop app. You can also download the desktop version of WhatsApp. You download a WhatsApp, a desktop version of WhatsApp, not the mobile version. It's going to look like this. And similarly, you could also download the Discord to your computer as well as your phone. So Discord also has a desktop version. If you think about it, maybe in the past, you might have used Microsoft Office in Windows. That is also a desktop app. This would be the end of this lesson. Basically, in this lesson, we discussed what is a mobile app and a web app and a desktop app. In the next coming lessons, we'll be discussing software development methodologies and different roles and different responsibilities. Basically, the whole process of a software product development.